Childhood back in 1960, it was a totally different world. We're talking freedoms, great knees, and yeah, some tough lessons learned the hard way. Today, we're going to dive into one of those stories. It's called Bucky's Big Accident. All right, picture this. It's 1960, a beautiful, sunny Mother's Day, and our main character, a little guy named Bucky, he's just 6 years old, has absolutely no clue that this day is about to become one he will never, ever forget. So to really get what's going on in Bucky's story, you gotta understand the world he was living in. We have a term for it now. We probably call him a free-range child. Basically, a kid who was trusted to just go out, roam around, and explore with a whole lot of independence. Man, it was a totally different way to grow up. So what does that freedom actually look like? Well, for Bucky, it meant he walked all over the neighborhood by himself. He even walked a full mile to first grade, alone, every single day. And you know that big tree next to his house? Yeah, he'd climb that thing almost to the very, very top. Let's put this in perspective for a second. Back in 1960, nobody wore bike helmets. And there were definitely no GPS watches or phones to keep track of where your kids were. It was just an era built on trust. And, maybe a little less of that constant worry we seem to have today. Okay, so with all this climbing and walking and roaming around, you'd think his parents would be worried sick, right? But honestly, nobody really seemed to be. Well, almost nobody. There was one person who had this one specific worry. And that person was Bucky's dad. But here's the thing. He wasn't worried about the tree climbing or those long walks to school. Nope. His concern was super specific. He was always worried about Bucky riding his two-wheeler. And looking back, it's kind of creepy, It was almost as if his dad had this feeling, this premonition that something really bad was going to happen, and that it would involve that bike. Which brings us right back to that Mother's Day. The morning started out great. His Aunt Jean came over to visit, but by the afternoon, Bucky was feeling pretty good about himself, maybe a little too good. He decided he was going to show off his bike skills, so he's riding up and down the block, and then comes the big moment. He takes his hands right off the handlebars. He has no memory of the fall, nothing. He doesn't remember what happened immediately after either. The very next thing 6-year-old Bucky remembers is waking up. But he wasn't in his bed and he wasn't on the sidewalk. He was in the dentist's office. So how bad was it? Well, the number really says it all. 2. He lost his 2 front teeth. Just gone. A permanent reminder of one little moment of showing off. But, the physical pain was really only part of the story. Bucky said he never, ever knew how much his mom loved his 2 front teeth until that day. After it all happened, she just cried and cried. So between the crazy trip to the dentist, the new gap in his smile, and seeing his mom so upset, this was way more than just a scraped knee. It was a day that Bucky never forgot. Yeah, that one afternoon didn't just leave a physical mark, it left a lesson. Actually, he learned a couple of really important things that day, things he remembered for the rest of his life. And so that's the story. A story about a carefree childhood, a dad's weird feeling, and one really painful accident. Which leaves us with a question for you. What lessons do you think Bucky learned that day?